keep finding ways that we're helping partners, finding either, balance in their life or focus or purpose.
Practices that are going to help improve your project management skills or your finances.
We're here to talk about setting long-term goals and then how to achieve them.
Increasing your quality, therefore becoming the best place in town to work. Welcome to Academy Live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Academy Live. Today's show is all about cyber insurance, and we are very lucky to have insights from John Reith of DataStream Cyber Insurance on the show today, and he'll be sharing about DataStream Cyber Insurance pivotal role in today's cybersecurity landscape. We'll explore the current trends shaping the cyber insurance market and gain valuable knowledge to empower MSPs to drive sales through strategic cyber insurance utilization. We'll also have a short video from Jeremy Nelson, who will share about how cyber insurance can be leveraged to drive more security sales. There is just so much to get into, so let's bring on Rex and Chris. Hi, Rex. Hi, Chris.
Woohoo!
Hey, Bessie.
Today is the last show of 2023, so how are you both doing?
Wow. It sounds heavy when you say that. It's hard to believe. Rex, can you believe it's December and the year's winding down?
I'm actually a little bit more worried about how few shopping days we have left here, but I think it's going to be great.
I always do mine on the 24th anyway, so regardless. Bessie, I will say this. It's interesting. It's been so much going on, and I think it just, kind of demonstrates the power of the poignancy of stopping and lifting your head up. Because when you say that, I stop and reflect back, and it just feels busy and active and head down and so much to do. We've accomplished so much this year, and it's really kind of exciting to pause and look back and to think about all the cool things that have happened in 2023. Bessie, do you have some highlights and some
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many courses that we've built and partners that we've helped. We started a whole new program this year for a subscription program that we've been piloting, and it's going to be launching really big next year. So I'm just so excited about all that we've accomplished. I would love to show a video that kind of highlights a little bit from our instructors.
I got some stuff from Strauss here real quick. I just pinged him and said, "Hey, you got any cool Academy on Demand stats?" So I'm just going to read these off real quick. 3,500 plus partner companies engaged in on-demand content in 2023. I was just kind of wow. 28, and that's from 28 different countries. We had over 6,000 courses taken. And over 6,000 asset views. That's the kind of the stuff you can download along with the courses. We put 90 new on-demand courses in market during 2023, and it's just awesome what's been going on.
Rex, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Okay, Bess.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. No, I wanna make sure that we take a look at this. Let's hear from some of our instructors with Pax8 Academy courses. I think you're gonna like this video.
When business owners or managers come to this and they want to know more about project management, sometimes that we find what people are calling project management is not really project management.
A lot of MSPs don't particularly like doing sales, so they'll hire somebody and the salesperson won't actually sell anything except getting a job with the company.
Even if you know some of the items in the class or you've been in business for quite a while, you're always going to get that small nugget of something that you haven't thought of. Or as the times change, the MSP space changes.
I started in the MSP industry before it was really even called the MSP industry. I was a computer consultant back in the day, which is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it, because I know what it's like to not know that stuff and how risky it is to not know what you're doing on the business side of the world. And And if I can save one MSP from having a problem, I'll consider that a win, and hopefully it's many more than that.
I love that quote from Jeremy when he said something like, the only thing the salesperson ever sold was selling me on hiring them. And I have heard that so many times from different partners over the years. Yeah, it's so true.
The best sales job is getting the job. That's great.
Yep. And that's why we put so much work into that results selling framework throughout building it throughout this year. And I am so looking forward to bringing it into the market January. So it's going to be exciting.
Definitely. I think this is a perfect time then for us to hear from another one of our sales experts, Keith, with his sales pitch. Can we see that video?
Play ball.
Tony Gwynn was one of the greatest hitters of all time and one of my favorite baseball players. He faced some of the best pitchers in baseball history. Pedro Martinez, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, Greg Maddux, all Hall of Famers. He faced them 323 times and he struck out 3 times. That's incredible. In 2023, during the playoffs, the Philadelphia Phillies struck out 120 times in this postseason. Tony Gwynn struck out 188 times in the entire decade of the 90s. That's how good of a hitter he was. He said there's no magic formula in hitting, just hard work and getting your timing down. One of his favorite players was Ted Williams. Ted Williams said the key to hitting is having the patience to wait for the pitch you can handle rather than to swing at something that the pitcher wanted. So what's this have to do with selling? Well, sales is very similar. Sales is a skill, it's not a cadence. The prospect doesn't want to hear your sales pitch or your latest and greatest service offering or the tools that you offer. You must have patience to get to know your buyer, get to know the prospect. Have them get to know you. Build a know, like, and trust relationship and be patient in building that familiarity. All relationships kind of grow and start from somewhere. So let's touch all the bases here. 1, build a know, like, and trust relationship with your targeted prospects. 2, come up with a prospecting plan on things that are effective that build familiarity and highlight you as a subject matter expert to that prospect. 3, understand the buyer's problems, what they care about, what's important to them before you start saying something about you and talking about things that you do. 4, wait for the opportunity to take the swing, meaning talk about yourself. When you do, they'll be more open to listening to you, right? Develop a skill of patience, build familiarity, and build trust. That's how you get the base hits.
Play ball.
I absolutely love Keith's analogies and how he is able to turn sales into everything related to baseball. It's really fun. And, there's 2 things there that he's been talking about in those videos that I've been hearing from him over and over again. One is about that know, like, and trust relationship. And the other is asking the right questions. I know those are both going to be really integrated into the result selling framework that we've been talking about a little bit. So I can't wait to hear more.
Yeah, I keep listening to his pitches and I think, man, he should do like a masterclass on this stuff. Oh, wait, he is the results selling framework. So I am looking so forward to introducing that to the community. So what do you think? Should we bring John on?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hey, John, welcome to the party.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me in. I'm excited to be here and talk a little bit about cyber insurance.
Yeah. Before we do that, though, if you could, as our tradition is, kind of give us a little humble brag about yourself, help everybody understand why we thought you'd be such a great guest on Academy Live.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to be on. My name's John Reith. I'm the head channel manager over here at DataStream Cyber Insurance. And if you've never heard of us, DataStream is an expert brokerage in the space. We work with pretty much the entire market in terms of carriers. It's about 40 plus carriers that we work with. And we have a unique insight into the market with our connection to our parent company Envelop Risk, which I'll dig into a little bit later on with my presentation. But that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that there's a cyber insurance company that has a channel program. Like most of these insurance companies, you call your general liability risk guy and you're like, hey, do you have cyber insurance? And he's like, I think we got something, But to have an actual channel program with experts that understand the managed service provider community and the needs and the risks and can guide us on what we need to do to protect ourselves so we can get the best rates. I'm like, it's so awesome that you're out there.
Yeah, and for us, we really saw this kind of need for a bridge, between the technology and the the insurance side of the cyber risk, space. There really wasn't a whole lot of communication happening between the two, and so we really saw the need for somebody to come in and bridge that gap.
Well, I don't want to get in the way of you dropping some knowledge on us, so let's take a look at what you brought.
I think, let's start with the quote of the day, right? I think you got a quote for
that's
us,
right.
So let's take a look at that.
That's right.
Let's take a look.
Yeah, if you spend more on coffee than on IT security, you will be hacked, right? This is a Richard Clark quote that flew through my stream at some point a couple years ago, actually, and I think it's just so true. It's so true, especially now for the SMB space, who probably up until recently is spending more on coffee than IT security. But something I've always telling people is that obviously particularly SMBs is that we were always heading in a direction where you were going to need to start taking your cybersecurity seriously, right? And start actually maybe getting some of these tools that you've been hearing about in place, and maybe get something like cyber insurance in place. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's an important thing to think about is what is that comparison of your cyber budget really compared to not just your coffee budget. That's more of the joke side, but compared to the rest of your budget, right? And how does that look? And really start to think about it.
Yeah, important for people to think about, definitely.
Yeah. And it's not just about what you're spending anyway. It's about the strategy that you have to protect yourself.
Definitely. Well, while John gets his presentation set up for us, I'm really excited to learn more because we talk so much about cyber insurance, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to learn more about it, for me especially. Let's see. Yep. So let's see. Let's take it away, John, with his presentation on cyber insurance with DataStream.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you, Bess. And yeah, today we really want to talk to you guys about obviously cyber insurance, give you a little bit of knowledge in that space because it is an ambiguous space, but also really talk to you about how cyber insurance can be your ally in this cyber risk market as you're working with your customers. And if you look back, insurance has actually been a space that has innovated and driven change and compliance for decades. If you think about things like seat belts or the fire sprinklers that folks are required to have, those were all driven by the insurance space, right? You do have, fire insurance, but in order to obtain that fire insurance, you're actually required to have those tools and technologies that mitigate the potential risk, right? The sprinklers, the actual alarms, the, fire extinguishers, all of those things. And cyber insurance is no different. We're really starting to see this happen. We're seeing the requirements in the cyber insurance space driving the spend in the rest of the cybersecurity technology space. And we really believe that's going to continue forward. And so I want to talk to you about that today and how you can really use insurance to help you drive your own sales. Now, this beginning half of our presentation, I'll kind of cruise through, and you'll be able to, of course, come back through the recording and check this out in greater detail. But I think this information is probably fairly familiar to most of you. But the SMB space and the cyber risks they face is no joke anymore, right? There's no such thing as being too small or really any specific industries that are, off guards or safe, quote unquote. It's really permeated throughout the entire SMB space. And looking at the numbers, are enough to realize, what a danger it can be to the SMB space. It's not just something that they're hearing about happening to the larger guys, right? And these are the kinds of conversations that we have with customers. But the big one that I wanted to talk about is ransomware, because this a thorn in everybody's side right now, and for us, we firmly believe is going to continue being a thorn, right? This was something that really bridged the gap between, the attacks happening on the enterprise space specifically versus the SMB space. We had the fast forwarding happen with the pandemic as folks went home. There was more opportunities to attack. And then ransomware, this real development of, hey, if I can either find data of yours that's sensitive or maybe shut you down when you can't afford to be shut down, suddenly I can leverage a ransom against you. And so it doesn't necessarily matter how much you have, right? So we really see ransomware continuing to be a thorn in the SMB side. It's not going away. And it's something that really insurance can help with, right? And so moving into the more insurance conversation of this discussion, we really do believe that it's the kind of post-attack side of the conversation, right? The MSPs and the technologies, y'all are focused on the, preventing the attacks. You're the tools put in place to help mitigate the overall frequency and severity of these attacks happening, while the post-attack side is going to be the insurance side, right? How is that response look like? How successfully can that company get back up and running? And so naturally, it is the next step into protecting a business. That's really why we've seen the development and the growth in the SMB space recently. But to give you guys I'd like to give you guys a general idea of what a cyber insurance policy covers, specifically a good cyber insurance policy. One of the reasons we act as this expert brokerage that works with 40 plus carriers is because it is an unstandardized market. So every carrier slightly different from the next carrier in terms of both what the cost of their insurance is, what they're requiring to obtain it, but also the coverages that you might find. So some carriers may drop some of these coverages, but the better carriers that offer good cyber policies are going to include all of the coverages that you see here. They're going to have both first and third party coverage, right? So first party is going to protect you against the direct costs of any of those events. And then the third party coverage is actually going to protect you against any lawsuits that might be sent your way due to a incident that occurs against you, but then affects either vendors or customers that might be connected to you. Those are two big things you want to look for. Of course, data breach and response remediation down below is going to be a large portion of the coverage. Second largest portion is going to be business interruption, contingent business interruption coverage. We really want to look for that one. Contingent business interruption is actually one that's often dropped, though, as you move away from those carriers that kind of offer the best policies. Or cyber extortion, aka your ransomwares, as well as social engineering, aka your phishing attacks. All of these are going to be covered. Down below, you also see some of the smaller coverages that are included in a good cyber policy is going to be cyber crime. So this is going to be fraudulent transfer, those kinds of activities, digital asset destruction, and system failures are also covered. So you can see a good cyber insurance policy is actually incredibly broad in terms of what it's going to cover. But as I mentioned, there is a difference between where it's an unstandardized market, right? So it's not like your homeowners or your auto where you go to any carrier and it's, virtually the same product that you're getting at any of those carriers, maybe slight differences. They can be drastically different. And what you're seeing is really a tiered market develop where you have the kind of upper echelon carriers, excuse me, I often refer to them as the gold star carriers. They're the ones that are truly offering the best policies, the ones with all those coverages that we went through without lacking any of them, but also naturally have more requirements that they're going to ask of their customers. And as you move down that list, you may find other carriers that might have fewer requirements than those guys, but you're always sacrificing something. Whether the premiums are going to be more expensive, you have less coverages, as you see, sublimits on your coverages, or maybe the language itself in the policy is not as ideal. A good example is it maybe a reimbursement policy as opposed to a pay on behalf policy, just meaning the carrier in a pay on behalf policy will actually cover the costs as they're occurring. And a reimbursement policy, you're just battling that carrier, for the foreseeable future to get them to pay you out. Now, I want to also touch on what some of those requirements that we're starting to see in that space, right? So what are some of at least the baseline requirements that's going to start opening the doors to some of these carriers to find at least a decent policy? And MFA is going to be, as well as you can see, data backups, specifically offline cloud backups. Both of those are pretty much hard requirements across the board. There's not really any carriers that are offering policies without those in place. Password management is also one that's almost across the board. There's still a couple carriers maybe, but again, those that offer the policies that aren't requiring it, you're sacrificing something, right? So they're typically pretty expensive. EDR is another big one, as well as awareness training. Both of these are going to be particular requirements of those gold star guys, the upper echelon, in order to unlock the doors to the best carriers offering the best pricing and the best policies. Those two are big requirements for those guys as well. So how do we come into the conversation for you guys? How do we help you? Well, obviously, number one, we be an expert resource, right? Somebody you can send customers to, but we've also developed tools to help tell really the argument that I just gave you guys, right? It's a complex space. In order to get the best policies, you really need to get the best tools in place in order to unlock those doors. So we've created some tools to help do that. We also have one that I'll touch on that helps customers post, after they've actually bound a policy. That's our instant response plan builder. And of course, we do have a universal application that's we have a brand new update too I'll touch on, and how all these can drive IT sales. Now, DataStream, this is just to give you guys a basic insight into kind of how our model works. And as I mentioned, wanted to touch on our parent company briefly. That's Envelop Risk. You see them up at the top. They're actually a reinsurer, and they sit behind all of the carriers we work for as a reinsurer. A reinsurer just takes on portions of risk for the insurance carriers. And so they sit behind all the carriers we work with, and they get fed live claims and loss data. So all the data that we're able to gather from them, we end up putting into our tools that you guys can use to have deeper conversations with customers about their cyber risk. And the first one, that's our probably most popular one, is our cyber insurance readiness assessment. And this is going to be a great tool my partners use to at least start the conversation with customers about their cyber risk. It's going to do the same external scanning that the carriers do, and combine that with our proprietary data from our parent company to show them, hey, this is what your expected risk is, right? Everybody has a baseline risk on their general size and their industry alone. And so we can start showing customers those numbers, as well as you might be able to see some general claims data, like what's the average, dollars and cents that their industry is seeing. But the idea being, we can give you a nice risk assessment very easily to walk into meetings with customers to introduce that subject of cyber risk, and ultimately why they should consider cyber insurance. As I touched on before or earlier, we do have an instant response plan builder. It's a very basic one, but it checks that box for the insurance carriers that are asking for an incident response plan in place. and is just so important as well. I'm sure, as many of you are familiar, just having a printed out document that contains the phone numbers and the contacts of the people that you need to, get in touch with during an incident, can drastically change what the beginning, hour and a half of that incident looks like. So it's one of the reasons why more carriers are asking for this from their customers, and why we've created at least a way for customers to very easily make one, at least a basic one, and get that in place. So created several tools to help you guys along the way, and one of the big ones is our universal application. It's truly, we've leaned into what we believe our true value to you guys is, which is helping you drive your own growth using those requirements, and our application does just that. So number one, it's very easy for you guys to use. You jump in, it's easy. As you can see, we even have a referral button, so it's easy for you to submit a customer who wants to start seeing quotes. You can even start that application for them, which we'll touch on here in just a second. So if a customer starts the application, they can easily share it with you. So again, we wanted it to be collaborative, so it's very easy for them to share it with you and assist them with filling out the cybersecurity portion of the application. And a brand new feature is it's actually possible for our partners to just go ahead and start the application on a customer's behalf. And since you're most of the time the one filling out that cybersecurity section, why not just go ahead and get started on that section right away? So it gives you that ability to go ahead and start that section, and then email the customer, the link to the remaining portion. So hopefully helping you guys get customers through that process easier as well. And then the real kit and caboodle of our application is it does a gap analysis at the end. So depending on how that customer answers those cybersecurity questions, we're going to let them know, hey, you said, for example, no to having, MFA in place. This is going to be a hard requirement for the carriers, and something that's going to be virtually impossible to get quotes back without. I highly recommend contacting your MSP, getting that in place before clicking submit on the application. And you can actually see here, there's a little button for them to inform you, drop in their, your email, so they can easily share out that list tools and technologies that they need to get in place in order to open the door to better and better carriers. So, really trying to lean into what we believe our value is, and what the value we think is working with any insurance expert, let alone working with somebody like us. But using the requirements to really help you drive your own sales. And we've seen it work. We're truly seeing more and more customers lean on this as the de facto framework for their cybersecurity. And MSPs, you guys are the boots on the ground, so you guys can truly lead the way, right? You can solidify your position as this kind of one-stop shop by incorporating the insurance angle, and use that angle at the same time, help encourage the sales, right? Show customers that it's not just you banging on their heads, to get MFA in place. In fact, without some of these basics in place, most of the carriers won't even touch them, with a 10-foot pole. But however we can come in, help you, for the foreseeable future, educate customers on the need to take their cybersecurity more seriously, right? Ultimately helping you drive your own spend. But in our opinion, ideally, leading them to treating you as more of a partner versus a provider, right? For a long time, you guys have been seen as kind of IT providers, and being a provider is really a one-way street, and we believe it should be a two-way street, and however we can come in and help you guys shift customers into that mindset, we want to help you do. So thank you guys so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. I think we have a little bit of time for some Q&A, and hopefully maybe a bit of time for Q&A. But if you guys are interested in becoming a partner, the next steps are signing up. We have a QR code that'll take you to our quick application, or you can learn more at datastreaminsurance.com. You'll see the partner section, in the menu there, and you can learn more there. Or don't hesitate to reach out. There's my email as well, john.reith@datastreaminsurance.com. Anytime. Don't hesitate to reach out. But again, thank you guys so much for having me on, and happy to take any questions.
Wow, that was really interesting. I'm glad that we had John on. We have a few more questions for him. Do you have any for initial thoughts, Rex, before we toss over to Jeremy?
Oh man, I'm glad Matt Lee's not on the show. He'd probably be freaking out over a QR code right now. But hey, I am wondering about that assessment. And is John with us?
We're gonna have him on after we hear from Jeremy. Yeah. So it's just
when he comes on, I am wondering about when companies are filling out that assessment. They might think, do you have MFA installed? They think about the one app that has it and they say yes, but then they have like a hack related to a more important app not having the QR code or not having the MFA, and then all of a sudden their coverage is at risk, right? Like how big of a problem is that? And then we'll go to Jeremy.
Yeah, in terms of liability, as they're filling out that is what you mean, if I'm understanding the question correctly, because that's absolutely a common one, right? Absolutely. And so the liability, so when a customer fills out this application and we send it to the carriers themselves, what they're doing is they'll sign that they attest to the questions being correct. And this is actually true of really any insurance policy. When you sign the application itself, what you're signing is that you're attesting to the questions being correct. Not necessarily that you even were the one to fill out the application, but that you are the one of importance who needs to, sign it, and that you attest to the questions being as accurate as possible. So the liability always comes down to the signee. It will never be the person who's filling it out, including the MSP themselves.
Yeah, because I could see they believe that they're answering truthfully, but then there's a hack, and then it finds out that it wasn't fully truthful, but they just didn't know what they didn't know. That's kind of scary.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons we firmly believe, hey, get a expert in IT involved with filling these out as well, because you can imagine a customer trying to fill some of these questions out on their own. That leads to them potentially filling out this incorrectly, and the carrier is going to do their due diligence come claim time, and if they dig in and say, hey, you said you had MFA in place, and we dug into the forensics, and 3 months into the policy that went bye-bye, they're going to do their due diligence. So filling out that application correctly is of utmost importance, and so doing it with an expert is really beneficial.
Well, like we always tell our partners, there's margin and mystery, and I think there's probably a lot of mystery in filling out those applications. So,
definitely.
Well, we're gonna give you a little break to get a drink of water, John, and we're gonna hear from Jeremy, who's gonna be talking a lot about the similar things you just heard from John. Jeremy Nelson's our manager of sales coaching, and he'll be sharing a little bit about some things John was talking about, how cyber insurance can help you grow your MSP, grow as an IT provider, sell more security. And so let's hear from Jeremy.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Nelson. I'm the sales coach manager here at Pax8, and I'm here to discuss with you how you can use cyber insurance to help sell security to your prospects or your clients. The issue that a lot of clients run into is that we want our clients to be secure. Our clients really want to be secure, but it can be expensive and it can be hard to explain. And so what happens is you can kind of get into an adversarial relationship where, hey, you need to buy this stuff. And they're like, well, I don't really want to buy it. And if I don't buy it, what's my risk? Or can I buy a little bit of it? Does that help? And so that's not really a great relationship to do. So the way that you can overcome that and can get your clients and prospects what they need is to have the idea around cyber insurance, because most companies these days require cyber insurance of some sort. And so just like when you buy auto insurance, they're going to ask you some questions like, hey, do you have an emergency cutoff or a theft prevention device on your car? How safe a driver are you? Do you have a lot of tickets? And based on those answers, they're going to decide whether A, they'll insure you at all, or B, how much they're going to charge you. But the expectation is that you're going to fill that out accurately. And if you don't fill that out accurately and then you make an insurance claim, they're going to audit what you said was accurate. And if it's not, they may not pay you as much or they may not pay you at all. So this is a problem. In cyber insurance, it's almost worse. Not because anybody's trying to mess around, but the cyber companies are having a hard time managing their risk. So they keep adding more and more questions because they need to understand exactly what the security arrangements for those companies are so they can properly price the insurance that they want to sell them. So where do we come in and how do we help? Insurance company, a cyber insurance company, is going to send your client or prospect a list of all the questions they need. And because of a lack of knowledge or a misunderstanding, a lot of companies do not fill those out accurately. Well, when they don't get filled out accurately, then there's a claim, fortunately a security breach of some sort. The first thing the cyber insurance company is going to do is audit the piece of paper and see whether everything that the company said they were doing, they were actually doing. If they discover any discrepancies, then again, just like auto insurance, they might decide to pay less or not pay at all. And that's where we come in. We talk to somebody and we say, look, let's take a look at what the insurance company is requiring you to do from a cybersecurity perspective. We're going to review that with the client. We're going to look at it. We're going to audit what they do. And then we're going to help them fill out the form. And we're going to say, well, look, it asks if you're doing this and you're not. Now you're going to submit that to the cyber insurance company. The cyber insurance company is going to say, if you don't do that, we can't insure you. And they're going to go, or if you would do this, we'll charge you less. Well, then the client comes back to you. You work with, say, okay, this is what it's going to cost you to implement what your cyber insurance company wants from you to be able to either write it or to save you money on the insurance cost. And now what we've done is we've turned this kind of adversarial relationship. Hey, you really need this, but they're not really good at managing what the risk is about what if they don't do it. Versus, hey, now this other company is requiring it because you need it to do business, and we're going to help you solve that problem and make sure that you can accurately fill it out and that you're going to do what you say you do, so that if unfortunately there is a claim, they will pay it because we made sure that we're meeting the requirements. I hope you found this useful, and if you need any more information about it, please don't hesitate to check out Pax8 Academy.
Well, I really want to say thank you to Jeremy for creating that video and to bringing some more insights to us, because it's always good to hear it from multiple directions. That's why we like to have SMEs, subject matter experts, on the Academy Live show. Yeah, I think that was great. What do you think, Chris?
Absolutely. No, it's fun. It's fun. I mean, personality comes across. We've said this before and talk about how much I just enjoy people's passion around what they're interested in. And I always learn a lot from Jeremy and just his experience. And so I think he does a great job in this video. So I'm glad we played that.
Yeah, I'd love to bring John back on to have a few more Q&A questions and to get a little bit more into this topic. So John, can you come back on? Hey.
Hey,
absolutely.
John, thanks for being here. One of the things we talk about, with managed services is kind of the sense of risks, trying to minimize the risk for our client, taking on things at a flat fee, have everything included, et cetera, like that. When we talk about cyber insurance and some of these risks, can you talk a little bit about, through these processes, making sure that MSPs kind of mitigate risk? Can we talk about shared risk, and do you have some top things that really kind of stand out that MSPs should be doing to make sure that they're sharing that risk and not absorbing all that around cyber and potential claims?
Yeah. One of the best things that I am highly encouraging of is having a very strong MSA. And having an MSA with very clear language for your customers in terms of where your liability lies, right? That right there is going to be a document that will be incredibly helpful anytime any potential lawsuits come up down the line during your business. Having that be as airtight as possible is going to be one of the first steps into making sure that liability is understood by both parties where it's lying, right? Number two is really going to be maybe a little bit leaning into the insurance side of things. Honestly, making sure everybody has their own individual coverage is important. I've had several partners reach out with the curiosity of the aspect of maybe trying to umbrella coverage. And that's where I have seen folks get into stickier situations with liability when you're trying to basically offer almost their own guarantee or insurance on what they're doing as a company. That's where I start to get really worried and have actually educated some partners away from that type of language and that type of process and you know it is a area, highly regulated area, and so keeping that line very clear is, I think, important, and I think more important than what I think the value a lot of these folks lean into with offering their own product, which is making it just easier on the customer because it's a one-stop shop and the paperwork is all under, one house, which obviously is nice, but it leads into gray areas legally. And so, yeah, those are two big things I think right out the gate to keep in mind.
Good.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think I joined Pax8 as new to the MSP space and learned about MSAs through our contracts and agreements course that we have. So if anyone else out there is looking for advice, that's an instructor-led course we have at Pax8 Academy. So learn more about what your MSA should include and what are the best practices there. So wanted to make sure I dove into that. The second part of what you were talking about was sort of a conversation that Rex, Chris, and I were having a little bit before our call was around what are some of the differences between having the MSP having their own cyber insurance and all their customers having cyber insurance. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that looks like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of leans into exactly what we were just talking about is,
Yeah.
I've had partners kind of ask, can't I just get kind of my own coverage and then kind of just
Yeah.
tuck customers under my own coverage? And yeah, it leads to a very messy, can lead to the carriers pointing fingers and back and forth, and can lead to really drawn out, messy legal scenarios. And so, a much better and especially legally speaking place to be is going to be everybody under their own individual coverage, because then it comes down to the carriers themselves, and you don't have the customers coming back to you pointing their fingers at, okay, well, this all comes down to you. You're the one, insuring us, and you're the one implementing your tools. You said that, you're insuring us because you're saying you have so much trust in your ability to run these tools, right? But tools are just that, right? They're tools, and people are people. Human error is always going to be a factor. So there's just never going to be such thing. It just makes me very nervous anytime a partner comes in. It's typically new partners. They're coming in really, antsy to get going, and they want to like offer their own kind of insurance, and based off of how confident they are in the ability to offer their services, right? Which everybody, I mean, anybody, but it's just not the
Too
world
much
we live in,
confidence,
right?
though.
There's just, it's just there's such
confidence.
thing as too much, yeah. There's just no such thing, right, as 100% protection. That's exactly why insurance exists in the first place, in the world, let alone in the cyber world, right? We could spend millions of dollars coding, our businesses in fireproof paint and doing all that thing, but we don't. That would be extraordinarily expensive, right? We do as much as we can, put the proper tools in place that mitigate most of that risk, right? And then we transfer the remainder, to insurance. And cyber is no different, right? It's the exact same strategy, right? You get those tools and technologies in place to ultimately mitigate the frequency and severity of these incidents, and then transfer the remainder of that risk to insurance. And insurance is now requiring you to do the first step, really, in order to get it. So they're really coming hand in hand.
And I think that's one of the, this two-edged sword. I think, it's kind of this annoying thing, but I think that because it's such a strong lever, you know, it's not us, it's not the MSP. You have to be compliant. You can't renew this coverage. You have to do XYZ. It kind of removes some of that onus. We still need to have the conversations. We still need to trust but validate, right? But I think it has made some of this gain some traction, I would imagine. Now, are you seeing any trends in the way MSPs are approaching this in the relationships? Like, just one example, but don't leave this as the only question to answer. But what other trends are you seeing MSPs? Like, for example, is having a cyber policy, having coverage, a standard requirement for their clients? Is that becoming more commonplace, or what other trends are you seeing MSPs adapting around cyber insurance?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something I almost broached as we were talking about MSAs. Is a trend I am seeing is having, the requirement of obtaining insurance in the MSA. If you're going to be a customer of ours, we're expecting you to meet us halfway, is really, a way of kind of doing what the end of my presentation was doing, right? Saying this is going to be a two-way street, right? If we're going to get into business together, this is not us coming in as your IT provider alone. This is going to be a partnership, right? And that's really what the requirement of insurance can help do for you guys as MSPs, right? If you have it in your MSA, it's really kind of, it's setting that bar to the customer of this is going to be a two-way street, and on the liability side of things, obviously as a business, as an MSP, your business is tied to these customers staying in business, right? So it just helps to know, obviously, that if they're hit by an attack, they have the insurance to cover it, right? That's kind of the protection side for the customer. But for you guys, if you have it in your MSA, obviously it just naturally helps drive your sales, because it's really a domino effect that they are going to need to get at least some of those bare minimum tools and technologies in place to even obtain that insurance in the first place. So absolutely is a trend I'm seeing more and more. And just as a whole, what I was going to say before you gave that example was just the trend of, leaning towards these requirements and using these as truly a driving force to help show customers. Because I like, the term you use of onus, right? I think for a long time, we've been throwing these different frameworks, NIST and, the various compliancy frameworks that have come out of the IT space, but that was just it. They were always still coming out of the IT space. So for SMB owners, the onus still felt like, or excuse me, they felt like the onus still fell on them to do the research of what they actually, quote unquote, needed to get in place. Where suddenly now there's this kind of framework that they can understand. Okay, this, insurance is a model I've dealt with ever since I started a business. They're going to pay me in case of this worst case scenario. But in order for that to happen, they may have me jump through some hoops in order to avoid that worst case scenario, right? So we're really starting to see it work as far as an almost de facto framework for the SMB space to lean on as like, okay, the NIST can be a little overwhelming, but at least these basics that the carriers are requiring, I can kind of wrap my head around. And then it gives you guys, obviously, on the technology side, your foot in the door to continue that. And actually, something that you kind of mentioned too was the insurance sets up a nice little schedule, right? You have an annual renewal. So at the very least, you have that annual checkup. Hey, let's make sure that your technologies are still in line with what the insurance carriers are requiring. Let's make sure you still have your MFA in place. You're keeping good records of all that. So if a claim comes up, we can show it all. It gives you a nice annual schedule to continue that cadence, and doesn't seem pushy, right? It gives you kind of this third party that you can insurance that you can blame the reaching out to them on.
It's always good to have that.
Anyway, I often say anyway we can come in as the bad cop, quote unquote, right? And help educate. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, John, we have a quick little graphic that I want to show, because it some of the things you were already talking about, but I wanted to just get your thoughts on it. So we have this graphic. It's covering the different how you can strengthen your cybersecurity to meet those cyber insurance requirements. And there's a few ideas here. So the first is around cybersecurity training, incident response and business continuity plans, multi-factor authentication for everyone with remote access to company systems, an audit of third-party vendors and partners. I think we have a few more here. Network security, making sure that's all up to date, business data backup, and business password management. Now that was all very quick, but some things that you're definitely talking about, and we could dive into each one for so long, but were there any there that stood out to you or that you would want to kind of expand on from that list that you think are really important?
Yeah, no, I think that is a great list, and it's a great starting point for any company who is looking to both check the box for having, getting a start on their internal cybersecurity as well as wanting to open the doors to some of these carriers that are offering the better cyber insurance products. Yeah, the other thing I was gonna say is the big three right now are MFA, offsite cloud backup, or excuse me, four. There's been a fourth that has recently been added. Was the MFA offsite cloud backup, EDR, and the cybersecurity awareness training. But those are being not only asked for by the majority of the carriers that we work with, but are particularly hard requirements by the better ones. So unlocking the doors to the better policies, those are going to be at least the basics. And there might be some of the carriers, again, unstandardized market, and so some of the carriers have even additional requirements. But those right there, that list definitely get you in a good, at least get you started in the right direction, opening the doors to some of the better carriers out there for sure.
So here's a little bit of a curveball, and by the way, like you said, and I love that list of that four and the most common, and I think it's just great that there becomes a focus point, and it kind of becomes this checkbox, and hey, you have to, and we have to implement these, and you kind of have it's like you said, the security frameworks are great, can be overwhelming, but it provides a focus and a way to define and communicate that. So the question I have for you are, what are some of the um, under acknowledged? What are some of the surprise ones? What are some of the things that maybe people don't think about as easily? I imagine most of the people listening in have that familiarity of that offsite backup or the secondary.
A big one was A big
What
one
are we
was
not
right
thinking
there
about? Like what?
on that list. Yeah. Big one is the incident response plan. It's amazing how many SMBs you talk to that don't have just something printed out in case an event happens. And not only that, but it is being asked for more and more by the carriers. You're seeing it pop up on more and more of these carriers' applications because it seems so simple, and it can be so simple, like truly, even like our builder that we have, it's nothing crazy, it's not mind blowing, it's really just a place to organize the context of who needs to be contacted, who's important, the CEOs, the IT folks, and then organizes it in a way of like, okay, here's the first steps, who's going to talk or who should be contacted first, next, all of that good stuff. But honestly, incident response plan is one of the big ones that for some reason people don't think about.
Okay, thank you. No, that's a perfect answer.
Yeah,
that's good for us to know in Academy because that's more training that we can give our partners around that. So I really appreciate that. Absolutely. John, we're getting close to the end of our hour together. So is there anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you want to mention, or what are the kind of final things that you want to make sure to share with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it went by fast, didn't it? Boy, the final event of the year is going to do that
Always
to you, right?
Does.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. But no, I think just as far as final notes, just for those out there that are wondering, insurance is really here to be your friend. Now, I know some MSPs have been kind of hesitancy on getting, engaged or partnering up with an expert in the insurance space, but there are a couple of us out there, and partner up with one of us. Truly, we're here to be a resource to you over here at DataStream. That's our number one goal, is how can we best kind of work with our MSP partners. We did that because we think you guys are the true boots on the ground, right? You're the folks who are working with these SMBs every day, so we want to work with them through you, right? You guys are the real folks. But yeah, I mean that's really kind of the final wrap up I wanted to give you guys. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Excellent. Thank you so much, John. It was great having you on the show, and I'm so glad that we had a chance to connect and to learn more about cyber insurance. So we'll say bye to you now, and we'll bring Rex back on for final thoughts.
Thanks,
Bye,
John.
everybody.
John.
Thanks for having me.
Wow, it's kind of cool to have like a full 5 minutes for final thoughts. We did that pretty good today. I'm going to suggest we go Bessie, Chris, and then me, and I'll kind of wrap up the year.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, my final thoughts are really, if you're not getting into cyber insurance yet, this is the time to do so, right? If you are just doing it where you have to, right? Maybe thinking about making sure all of your clients are using cyber insurance, that you're protected with cyber insurance in addition to them, and that you are really being aware of what are the major requirements needed for cyber insurance companies, and you're working to not only install them on your clients' environments, but also your own, because at Pax8, we always say, drink your own champagne. So that's my final thoughts here. Chris, what do you think?
So for me, I think it's, break it down, keep it simple. It's easy to get overwhelmed and look at the policies, look at all these different things. You can look at 100 things you could consider doing. When we break it down, I love the list we shared. And you kind of really identify a list of 5-10 things, and one at a time, just break it down into small bite-sized bits and tackle it that way. Always be making progress, always be moving forward, and just break it down one thing at a time, and keep at it. That's my final thought.
Chris, I'm glad you said break it down one thing at a time. We started Academy Live, close to a year ago. This is our first year end. And I remember, we made a list of things we want to talk about. There's about 300 things on the list. And it's like, how are we going to bring all this content that we have in Academy into a 1 hour weekly show? And, at first you think, oh man, 52 shows, how are we going to fill that? And then we started making our list, and it was, oh my gosh, we've only got 52 shows. And then you throw in a couple of holidays or whatever, and it's 45 shows. And there's still 250 things on the list we want to talk about. And it's kind of the same thing, in our partners. They've got 300, 400, 500 things that they want to do to improve their business, right? And we talk about improving operations and improving the business being that 1,000-mile journey that starts with a single step, right? I think that was kind of the first quote we had on the show. And we're working our way through the topics. We're trying to stay topical, but we're also trying to, work through the important stuff. And I just want to challenge everybody to, think about the end of the year, what we accomplished this year. Think about next year, what's on the horizon, what's on the roadmap. Commit the 10% of your time to work on the business, and let's go on that 1,000-mile journey.
Excellent. I love that, Rex. I want to just thank everyone so much for watching. We are going to be off the rest of December. Rex and I will be down under in Australia, and he'll be in New Zealand too. But we'll be back on January 2nd in the new year. We're going to be talking about New Year's resolutions, setting goals for your business, how to scale up. So we're really excited to share all that with you. So I just want to say happy holidays, happy New Year. We'll be back on Tuesday, January 2nd at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. We're on demand always. Please subscribe and like us on our YouTube channel. And I think that's it.
Rex, you want to take?
All right.
Oh yeah, Rex.
As always, think about what you did this year, what you accomplished, and what you're going to do next year, and go out and get her done. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.